Minor Vital. All right. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here with you on our final Friday press conference for the 2025 General Assembly session. This is an important day. While we are nearing the finish line, we have a few open items, but for the most part, all of the most important and critical issues that we set out from the beginning of the year are near or through the finish line, from the budget to an energy package to protecting against an uncertain future that comes from the Trump administration. Before I hand it over to our standing committee chairs for their reflections, I just want to highlight a couple key accomplishments for this year. First and foremost, the 2025 legislative session, I have a great deal of pride for the way that we approach the work and for each member of the Senate. Over these last 88 days, we faced challenges, and together we've made very significant strides to create a more certain future in the face of great uncertainty. Marylanders across every part of the state are feeling the pinch, and we knew that from the very beginning, whether it be grocery prices, utility bills, or fears about the new federal administration. In every case, I believe we've done the best that we could this session to address their key concerns. From the beginning, our commitment was clear. We had to take a very balanced approach to a challenging fiscal climate in our state budget that started with a cut-first approach to make Maryland more efficient. We had to weigh those cuts against our state's critical social safety net, and I believe we landed in a place that allows us to fully invest in public education, healthcare, and other important commitments that will allow us to make continued strong investments, even with the $1.6 billion that were taken as cuts through the state budget. We did have to raise revenues, which was something that we said from the very beginning was going to be a component of this work. But what I believe we did was strike the right balance of no across-the-board cuts, but instead we had very targeted revenue raisers that were focused on those who have done the best over the last few decades and for user fees that people utilize across the state of Maryland. When it comes to energy, we said from the very beginning that we wanted to return money to Marylanders as quickly and efficiently as possible, and we would do that by creating a short, medium, and long-term future that invests in Maryland-made energy. This was a once-in-a-generation energy package that is nearly finished and through the General Assembly. It charts a new path for Maryland, one that understands that we need more energy that is made here in the state of Maryland. Finally, I just want to just take a very brief moment to talk a bit about what's going on just down the road. As I said back in January, the session would be dominated by the new federal administration and the changes that would be coming as a result of a philosophical slash-and-burn approach. What we've seen has been incredibly worse than anything we could have contemplated. Just yesterday, the stock market had the worst day since the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Think about that, a global once-in-a-100-year pandemic. And in one day, the new president was able to decimate about $1 trillion worth of value in the American stock market. This is what we have to continue to face in the years ahead. And as we move into the interim, as we move through the final days of the General Assembly session, we will not stop working. There will be more to come on Monday with announcements about how we will approach this interim and how we will continue to monitor the situation and how we will look at federal dollars being cut from our budget continuously in order to fund tax credits and tax cuts for the ultra-wealthy. That said, I do want to end on a positive note that while we end on Monday, here with me today are the leaders that this state deserves. The Maryland Senate handled itself in a way that I think shows exactly who we are, where we had fierce disagreements and real questions on values and prioritization. But we did it in a way that was thoughtful, that was respectful, and that was in the best interest of the 6.5 million Marylanders who rely on us every single day. So with that, I would like to hand it over to our chair of the Judicial Proceedings Committee, Senator Will Smith.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. So first, I want to say thank you to our Senate President. I couldn't imagine serving next to and with a better leader to get us through not only the pandemic, but also a new administration, our economic challenges. It's been a real honor to serve with this leadership team. So I just want to say, Mr. President, thank you for your leadership. This year in the Judicial Proceedings Committee, we had 435 pieces of legislation, and we have 2 new members, Shanika Henson and Senator Sarah Love from District 16, both of whom are brilliant attorneys and who have contributed mightily to our committee and who have done some really significant work. In the Judicial Proceedings Committee this year, we had really 3 lines of effort. One was we had to produce significant legislation to protect our immigrant population amidst this new climate coming from the federal government. 2, we focused a lot on parole reform. We got the governor out of geriatric parole, and we did reforms to medical and geriatric parole. So those are significant accomplishments. And we also focused in on housing. We balanced the equities between protecting vulnerable renters, especially in this economic climate, but then also ensuring that we have the ability to create new affordable housing stock. We have a shortage of 96,000 units for housing. 53% of Marylanders are housing cost burden, meaning they're spending more than 1/3 of their income on housing. So that's a significant issue that we had an opportunity to address this year. Some of the other high-profile bills that came through is just yesterday, you saw that the House conformed or passed through the Second Look Act that passed through the Senate just a couple days ago. As I mentioned, geriatric and medical parole. We did some significant work on deepfakes and revenge porn. Obviously, as AI and our technology continues to iterate, those are continuing to be significant problems that we've looked to address. The governor had a significant expungement bill to address a case called the Abishak case. So we passed that and did some significant work with expungement to give folks new opportunities and when they're reentering society. And so with that, I'm really proud of the work that the Judicial Proceedings Committee did this year. I'm proud of our members. It's been an honor to serve along with this leadership team. And I'll turn it over to Chair Beidel and stand by for questions afterwards.
Thank you, Senator. I'm a little shorter. Good morning, everyone. And as Senator Smith said, I really appreciate working with Senate President Bill Ferguson and this entire team. This is just a wonderful leadership team this year. So as with JPR, the Finance Committee worked really hard this year. We reported 66% of the bills that we reviewed, a higher percentage than any other committee. We had 263 Senate bills and over 200 House bills, plus all the alcohol bills. My analysts, one of which is new, and my committee members have worked hard. The session has been stressful, but we still seem to like each other. We're still talking to each other, which is really something after 90 days. We had many health-related bills this year, as I thought we would, but not much on insurance or other business regulation. We did a study for the Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund, which needs to look at their rates and their subsidy issue. And we had a bill to increase the assessment for the Uninsured Employers Fund. But some of the more interesting bills we passed was a cryptocurrency for cryptocurrency kiosks, which is a really good consumer protection bill. And we expanded the upper payment limits for the PDAB to set upper payment limits, not just for the state health insurance, but for commercial carriers. And a really important consumer bill is the study for the Maryland Insurance Administration and the Department of Health to study the pharmacy benefit managers and how they are involved with the cost of pharmaceuticals. Our pediatric overstay bill has taken a tremendous amount of work, but the changes and the investment should help with the ED wait times, which is a big issue all over the state. We developed a comprehensive work group for artificial intelligence, thanks to Chair C.T. Wilson and ECM. And today we'll have the FMLA bill to delay payments from employers for 18 months. So it's been a really productive year, and thank you again, Senate President.
Okay, well, it is great to be here, and I have to say, not only is it a great team, but we actually do like each other, which I think is super, super important. I'm going to start. I did this last year. We were all bragging a little bit about our own committees, and a lot of folks don't realize the jurisdiction of the committee is beyond just education, energy, environment. It's great to have the President Pro Tem here who's on the EEE committee. It's those 3 topics, plus cybersecurity, data centers, election law, affordable housing, and a lot more, which is why we ended up with 350 Senate bills, 200 House bills. So at 550, she got the percentages of bragging rights. I'm going to say we have, by a fair amount, the most bills of any committee here in the General Assembly. And they were big bills. We collaborated with the Budget and Tax Committee on the blueprint. We were sort of responsible for the policy angle, B&T obviously on the budget. Senate President mentioned the energy package, the three-bill leadership energy package, which for those of you who watched the debate, Senator Augustine and I spent about 3.5 hours this week getting those bills out and over to the House. And I think the Senate President hit the highlights, how important those bills are in terms of in-state generation, addressing our resource adequacy problems, et cetera, et cetera. But what I do want to emphasize, I think what I'm proud of is those three bills all passed with strong bipartisan votes in committee and on the floor, which is no easy task. On top of that, we worked with stakeholders that were very much opposed to the bills as introduced. But at the end of the day, in the case of the presiding officer's bill, Senate Bill 937, at the beginning, we had the environmental community talking about scorecarding, et cetera. Well, yesterday they announced they're neutral. Same thing on Senate Bill 931, the siting bill. We had pretty much every county in the state of Maryland in opposition to the bill as introduced. At the end of the day, we put out a product that MACO, in that case, were neutral. And that was, again, no small feat. So I'm very proud of those, the way we did it. It was very professional. We tried to strike a balance and such. On the environmental front, Senator Augustine had the extended producer responsibility bill, which is an important environmental piece of legislation. We just had on the floor this week passed the Chesapeake Bay Legacy Act from the administration. On election law, we did for the second straight year pass a special elections bill in terms of how we resolve and fill legislative vacancies. I'm hoping in the final weekend the House will get on board and we can make a change to our Constitution to deal with that. And then finally, I will say we still have some bills in the committee. We're going to be taking up some bills today. The governor's, what's now a heavily amended version of the original bill, and even with the name change, the governor's Housing Development Act, which just passed out of the House of Delegates like 2 days ago. We'd had a quick hearing yesterday. We're going to continue that dialogue this afternoon. Similarly, the Building Energy Performance Standard, BEPS bill from the Maryland Department of Environment also came out of the House, heavily amended. We're going to have a discussion about that today. And there's a bill apparently on third reader in the House of Delegates from the governor on energy policy, another energy bill, which may or may not get over here. And so I don't know what the outcome, and we're all going to come down on those three bills, but there's still work to be done over this final 3 days. So with that, I'll turn it to the chair of our Budget and Tax Committee, who had to deal with some very challenging issues this year, Senator Guy Gazzoni. Chair Guy Gazzoni.
I think they know me. I think you've heard a lot from me this year. I'm going to be pretty brief. It would be easier if I just say we had one bill. I don't have my bill count here. I know we have other bills too. We have plenty of other bills that we've worked through, but I don't know how many we did. But we did have that one big bill, actually two, with the BRFA. As you're all probably aware, we began conference yesterday. We made a lot of progress. It continues along the path that we have chosen from the very beginning of working with the governor and the House to get to a good place. I have said multiple times already, but I'll say it again, and maybe with a little extra information this time. We set out 3 goals, and the first was to have a rainy day fund of at least 7.5%. We have 8%. We wanted to have a fund balance of at least $100 million, and we have over $300 million. And most importantly, as we talk about the structural deficit or structural shortfall, so we came in 26 with a structural shortfall of about $2.5 billion. We have wiped it out. We have no structural shortfall for 26. For 27, it was going to be $2.9 billion, and we've gotten that down to $300 million as we go into the next year's budget. And most interestingly, I thought even, because what we do affects out years in significant ways. For fiscal year 28, when we came in here, that structural shortfall was set at $4.8 billion. And right now, we're going to be looking at about $1.8 billion. The importance of this is understanding that the words of budgeting sometimes are confusing. They're confusing because people talk about deficits. Well, we don't ever have an actual deficit, and we all know that because it's in our Constitution, it's our requirement. But this idea of structural deficit, this idea of where we want to go and the things that we want to accomplish, and the policies that we want to promote, they can look like problems in out years. And if they were left alone, they would be problems. But that's not what we do here. We solve the problem for the current year, and we also look to solve issues that are before us in out years. We have done that in I believe, in a very exceptional way, a very important way, and as we move forward, we are in a much, much better position after this session than we were before. The only other thing that I think is of consequence, and is related, of course, is the blueprint that we have to do that remains. We'll have a conference committee on that. That's, I think, just been assigned, so we'll probably be working on that over the weekend. But between that, and we have another meeting today on the budget and the BRF at 2:30, we're going to be finishing up, and I believe finishing up strong. Thank you.
Just in summary, this is my 15th year in the legislature, my 6th year serving as presiding officer, and I will say of all of those, this session has been by far the hardest. Inclusive of the session with COVID, because the issues that we are facing this year have been more challenging and more uncertain, and it only gets worse as we hear new information each day. It's this group of folks and leaders that have made it possible that we have gotten to the place where we are, and as I listen through each of our chair and leadership team's accomplishments, it's just proof that these are the right folks to deal with this uncertain moment. So with that, let me open it up with questions.
President Ferguson, you have historically teased a Saturday session before the end of the legislative session. Yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, you said 100%. What are the hangups?
Yeah, we just have because we knew the most important issues that were out there were the budget, our energy package, and protecting against an uncertain federal administration. Those really dominated a lot of our work. There are still a lot of other things out there that we have to work on that are important, specific issues for particular communities or things that have to get dealt with. And so we have a lot of those kind of loose end issues that are outstanding that we have to work through today, tomorrow, and Monday. But we're in a really good place. Everything that nothing's done until the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. But I feel very, very good about where we are with 4 days left.
Mr. President, just one quick clarification, please. Chair Gazzoni had highlighted, who's going to be serving on the conference committee for the blueprint?
It's myself, Senator King, and Senator Watson.
And how do you think that's going to be? How do you think that'll go through?
Well, I mean, again, we've been another continuation of our cooperation. We'll come to a good place. I'm not going to predict exactly what's going to happen, but I'm pretty confident. Knowing, too, that both sides understand all the ties into the budget and the structural issues.
Can you give us an idea of the short-term and long-term implications of the three energy proposals you put forward, and kind of just give us a quick summary?
Certainly. On the short term, we are taking $200 million out of the C fund and returning it to ratepayers. It is going to be a rebate program based on usage that is the most efficient and effective way that we can get dollars back into the pockets of ratepayers. One rebate will go out at the height of summer, one will go out at the height of winter when we know that usage is the highest and the bills are the highest. So that is our very short term. In the midterm, we're looking at trying to make it easier for siting and permitting of a number of tier 1 renewable energy sources, from battery to solar to wind, to make it easier for those projects to get up and running and to be affordable, to be able to kind of pencil close deals to make sure that those energy programs can really move forward. And then in the long term, we're looking at both dispatchable energy and at things like nuclear and things that we know take longer for development, but are absolutely essential for Maryland-made generation of cleaner energy. And so we're not going to keep relying on coal plants to run at 3 times the cost. We are going to push Maryland to be a place for investment to come so that we have more Maryland-made energy here that we have control over instead of relying from other states to send energy in.
President. The governor's supplemental budget eliminated the 1% rate increase for DDA community services. How likely do you think that is to make it into the final budget?
So we will make adjustments. I'm really proud of the work that we were able to do with the DDA community and to restore a number of the cuts while looking at cost containment. Just like things like in all of Medicaid spending, there were a lot of areas where we had to make some very, very hard choices in order to anticipate the cost curve being bending downwards. And so I think we made the right choices. It was a balanced approach, just like we did with the full budget, we did with the DDA community. You want to?
Well, I mean, the decisions that were put forth by the administration in the supplemental, we need those changes. We need the decisions of that to actually get to the balanced budget. So they're tough. They're really tough. But we've got to get out of here with a balanced budget.
Chair Guzman, can you talk a little bit about how much of the decisions that are going to be made today related to the budget will ultimately end up shaping the contours of the agreement that you get to on the blueprint decision? And if you could elaborate a little bit on what those pushes and pulls are.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, where we stand on the blueprint is sort of a varying combinations of things that the House has taken and moved around from the governor's bill, and we've done the same thing. So all of those things have to be integrated together to work in the long term. Again, I don't want to make a prediction yet about exactly what that looks like, but at the end of the day, we need it to work together, and we need it to work together to continue the achievements of what I described earlier in terms of our structural issues.
Is it fair to say that the work that's going to be done in conference today on the budget is going to lay a lot of the groundwork for making the final decisions on?
Absolutely, they're all connected. It's all connected. Absolutely.
Senator Smith, on immigration bills, specifically to the Maryland Values Act, can you explain what the status is of that bill or the 287G provisions that were in that bill, and also the other bills that deal with immigrants who are not in the U.S. With legal status?
Sure. So there are 4 immigration bills before the General Assembly this year, primarily. 3 of which are in the House and 1 of which I think is still in the Senate. The 287G program, so when we first started session, 3 jurisdictions had the 287G program. I think we're up to close to 7 coming online by the end of the month. And so what that bill does is it would end the state's ability to enter into these agreements. Now, you know, a couple of years ago, we made the conscious decision to curtail 287G agreements to the detention center model, which has worked fantastically well. The version that came over from the House was interesting in that it mandated cooperation under certain circumstances for certain crimes. It required the counties to cooperate, but it got rid of 287G broadly. So we're having that discussion. My preference, as I have said from the very beginning, is to cease all 287G agreements. That is a discussion that we are going to continue between the House and the Senate. Understanding some of the real consequences that are likely to come from the federal government if we do that. We have to be concerned about what will happen with the National Guard. We'll have to be concerned what will happen with hundreds of millions of dollars that will likely be cut off as a retaliatory measure. I think all of those things have to come into balance, but I've been very clear what my preference is in terms of policy position for that. The other bills deal with sensitive locations. We are still working the details out with the House and the Attorney General and the Governor, and I hope to get that across the line. And you've got a data privacy bill, which is over in the House. I know they're still considering that information, and that's where we are.
Just a clip.
Sure. Let me just very briefly add. I think Senator Smith highlighted a key issue here, is that what's happening with the federal administration and the roundup approach that appears to be expanding is abhorrent. And I think all of us in Maryland look towards our immigrant communities and understand how much pain and suffering is being felt and fear. And we have to recognize the very true reality that there are consequences that have been issued from the federal government about what happens with states that do not comply with certain immigration orders. And so this is the value judgment that we are trying to navigate through. In particular, I think we've seen a transportation budget, U.S. Department of Transportation, that has said that billions of dollars of discretionary spending for transportation will be conditioned on One, marriage rates in a state. Why that matters for transportation is anyone's bet. And two, immigration enforcement. And so this has never in the history of the United States ever operated in this way, and that policy positions are being attached to billions of dollars of state aid. And so we have to be mindful of that. And we've been having conversations with the executive about each of these different policies. We would like to do whatever we can in any way to protect our immigrant communities against unlawful detainment and unlawful execution of deportation rules. But we have to do it in the context of an administration that has certainly put its finger on the pulse of inappropriate actions that can be consequences for certain things that states pursue.
Clarifying, you said that you would like to end 287G. Do you mean existing agreements or just going forward future ones?
Look, again, with the context that the Senate President just provided, my personal preference would be to cease all 287G, current and prospective and retro. I mean, all 287G agreements in Maryland. That would be my preference.
Mr. Chairman.
But is the loss of federal funding likely to prevent you from passing that particular bill?
Because these are not binary choices, and so weighing all the consequences from a very hostile administration, I think that's what the dialogue we're going to continue to have to the very end of the session.
Mr. Chairman, on the same subject, would you tell us your concerns? The House bill, as amended, would require notification of ICE once a convicted criminal is about to be released.
That's true under certain circumstances for like all the crimes of violence, for DUIs and the like. But what the bill also did was it required law enforcement officers to do that activity as well, not just detention center officials. So you're looking at a different model potentially with field enforcement, something we do not have in Maryland at the moment. And so that's the concern that I have with that version of that bill.
Chair Smith, the Child Victims Act reform bill passed out of the House yesterday. We have 2, potentially 3 days that the Senate will be in. What is the likelihood that it makes it to the finish line?
First, I want to say that the courage that Chair Wilson has exhibited in moving forward with a piece of legislation after having lobbied for and worked to get the Child Victims Act passed for years, sharing her story over and over again, for him to come up and recognize the fiscal challenges that we have before us, and then to offer that piece of legislation, I think is a real act of courage. So I just want to openly commend him for that. Second is, look, when it comes over, we're going to look at it, and it is our intention to move that bill forward. I don't know if it's going to look exactly like what the House has just sent over to us. I don't think there are going to be significant departures from what it looks like right now, but it is our intention to advance that piece of legislation.
How will that limit liabilities for the state? I understand that it creates a new May 31st window, and it does reduce some caps, but the many thousands could still apply before that, or file before that window. Can you explain how this lessens the financial stakes for the state?
Well, sure. As you know, the caps that exist right now are $890,000 per transaction occurrence if you're in the public, if something happens in a public facility. And then for the private side of the house, it's up to $1.5 million for each transaction occurrence. So what the bill does is it drops the caps to $700,000 for private and to $400,000 for the public entities, and it clarifies transaction and occurrence to whittle down to claimant per claimant. So you're going to significantly curtail exposure from the state and the privates, but then also the ability for that transaction occurrence. That's a clarifying piece of language that will limit the liability for the state and for the private sector.
What happens if all these cases?
Sure, yeah.
One additional component to this is, regardless of what passes, we believe that a settlement is the best opportunity for both victims and for the state. And so we are hopeful that those negotiations continue, and that we will see a process develop between the parties, that a settlement is the best option.
And that's with the Attorney General and
Yes.
Thank you.
Chair Smith, how much of what you just said, though, is caveated by the idea that you're depending on plaintiffs' attorneys to not rush to the courthouse before May 31st and file their claims under the existing rules?
No, that's going to happen, right? I mean, that is going to happen, but in terms of future exposure, that's what the bill does, and that's, I think, what we're going to have to consider.
But under the existing rules, I mean, you're still talking about potentially billions, perhaps tens of billions of dollars in maximum liability if all of the cases come in at the highest numbers under the cap.
Which again is why settlement is the optimal solution here, and I think that's we're hoping that the Attorney General and the plaintiff's attorneys can get together and work out a settlement.
Mr. President, on the energy bills, hearing about, I would call them, or Chair Feldman, I would call them slight differences in the House version of some of the bills. Can you talk about the plan to address that in the closing days of session here?
Sure, the House will move those forward today, I believe, is that right?
Yeah, it's on third reader.
Yeah.
Third reader today, and we've been working very closely with them the whole time, so I anticipate what they're putting on, we've already sort of said we're pretty good with, so I don't anticipate that's gonna be a big issue in this final weekend.
Chair Gazoni, can talk a little bit about the budget and the conference committee process. I know you're meeting again today, so you don't necessarily want to put the cart before the horse on some of the details, but going into this, you know, the Senate President had talked about not wanting to draw red lines on certain issues, but where do you feel things stand now heading into this next conference committee, given the differences between the two versions?
I mean, first off, I don't think the differences are that great. We'll make reasonable adjustments and compromises between the two houses. I really do think we're in a pretty good place. I'm not worried about us having one of those moments like has happened in years past where we're all wondering if we're going to make it through on the last night or not. We're going to make it through. It's going to be a good budget, and it's going to be within the framework of the things that I described at the very beginning.
Will it include any additions, or are we talking about the negotiations that are already on the paper for both?
It will. I mean, will there be little teeny tweaks of things that weren't there before? Yes, and there may be some adjustments to the way in which some of the revenues are being dealt with. But again, you're going to need to wait and see where we are by the end of the day.
What's the likelihood that we will still see the financial triggers in the blueprint stay in there after the conference committee?
Well, it's obviously something that we cared about, and we'll be having those discussions with the House. That'll be part of that conference committee.
Mr. President, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.